Hi, my name's Kelli Hutt, and I am a curriculum facilitator at Dallas Center Grimes Community School District. I'm also the communications director for ICSS, and this is my presentation called What Do I See? Source Analysis Strategies for the Social Studies Classroom. If you would like to access the materials, they are available in the shared Google folder that can be found in the members only page on our ICSS website, or you can also go to the bit.ly address that you see linked at the top of this slide. So, what do I see, or WDIS, is a strategy that you can use with your students to help them interact with primary and secondary sources in order for them to gain a lot of information from each source. And so right here is the resource that is available to you either on the ICSS website or via the bit.ly address. And while you're looking at this page, over on the left side, you will see the strategies listed, and then to the right will be resources available. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open up this virtual resource for the WDIS strategy and demonstrate how I would go about working with this with my students. So this first example here is one that works well for kindergarten or first grade. And as you can see, the source that I provided is a map. So what I would do is I would give my students a copy of this. That way they can use a pencil or a marker to mark up this source with what they see. Or I might display it on a screen and work through it as a whole class. It depends on the level of familiarity for your students with this particular strategy. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use blue. So I would ask my students, what do you see? And one of the first things they would probably point out is maybe the school building here or the park. Maybe they'd notice the library or the bus stop. They might point out the names of streets. They might point out that there's trees and maybe houses. They might point out the pet store. And basically anything that the students point out, you would circle. So maybe they say fire station or police station. Okay, so what we can see is there's a lot of information that we can get from this particular page. The next step that we would do is we would move into asking questions about this or having a discussion about what is seen on the page. So I would like to go on to another one here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. What do you see? What do I see in this picture? Well, I see students and I see adults. Now, as I notice this, I'm going to notice that the adults are white and the students are black. I notice that we have some pretty nice attire. Okay, perhaps clothing that isn't from this time period. We've got some angry facial features. Looks like it's raining. There's lots of umbrellas. Okay, and so all of these things then would help us move into the next process. And the next step to this process is the question formulation technique, or the QFT. So if you want a formal process, I would use this. If you want more of an informal process, I would just hold a discussion and talk about things we notice in the images and then move on from there. So with the QFT technique, so question formulation technique, there's a few rules and you can see them right here. So you write as many questions as you can. You don't stop to discuss, judge, or answer any of the questions. You write down every question exactly as it's stated, unless it's put in a statement, in which case you change it to a question format. So you would give your kids anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes to generate these questions. And then there's additional steps that you can go through this resource and see what the next ones are. Okay, so I would expect my students in a small group to have questions like, why are the adults mad? Where is this? When did this happen? Okay. All of these questions are important for students to be able to pull through, and then you can have further discussion about what is found in the source and lead it into your next element of your lesson. If for some reason your students are struggling on how to develop these questions, there's some additional resources that I have on the resource page to help work through this. The first one are these Thinking Like a Social Scientist cards, and I believe I got them when I took the statewide training about the social studies standards and some suggested instructional practices. So what they are, on the elementary cards, they start with a who, what, where, when, why, how prompt on one side. So you can use that side of the card to have your students try and ask questions that begin with each of these words or are linked with each of these ideas. They also have, and these are grade banded, have information about various social scientists. And so for this example, this picture right here, a lot of questions can come from the historian and the political scientist. So what happened in the past? What has changed or stayed the same over time? What rights do people have? What problems are people facing? Are people being treated fairly? All of these questions would be questions that the kiddos could use when working with this particular picture. There are additional elements to these cards as you get up higher in the grades. The 4th through 5th grade cards have a little bit more detail, a little bit higher level of questioning. And then the 6 through 8 and the 9 through 12 cards increase the amount of social scientists available, as well as some extra information about each social scientist. For those older students, the Stanford History Education Group, or SHEG, has some really great resources in how to read like a historian. And so one of my favorite ones is actually a Thinking Like a Historian chart. In order to access it, you need to go to the Stanford History Education Group website and log in or register and get a free account. And then once you're in there, you can access all sorts of different ones. But I'm just going to briefly show you the historical thinking chart. Okay, and within this, there's specific questions for sourcing. So looking at the who created the source, when, and some whys. There's some contextualization, corroboration, and close reading strategies. We've got some prompts and we've got some general student learning objective goals. And I'm not going to leave this up any longer just for copyright issues. Please consider going to SHEG and gaining a free account. That way you can use that resource, especially if you have students probably grades 5 and up. It's a really nice source. Now, one question that I get when using WDIS is whether it only works when looking at images. Absolutely not. You can use this for many more things. I have my students use it when we're looking at speeches and other written documents. Okay, and as you can see, what I would have my students do is go through and source by highlighting or circling or underlining important information, and then pulling key phrases and main points from the actual document itself. You can also take a look at charts. Charts works really well with this, and you would go through and notate what is said in the bottom, some of the different colored variations, the title, all of those would be important. You can also use this strategy to work with auditory items, so recorded interviews, videos, all sorts of different items that you could do to listen as well. With that one, I simply just changed the wording from what do I see to what do I hear. So hopefully this little presentation here has helped to provide some information for you on working with this strategy. If you have any questions for me, my information is on the screen. Please feel to reach out via email or Twitter. And I hope that this helps you and helps your students gain more information when working with primary and secondary sources.